It is around 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I'm in my work studio and I'm still in my pajamas. I could have slept in, but early mornings is when I can think the best. And there's less chance of interruptions. I'm taking the time to work on some story ideas for a comic. I'm working on the sketch stage before getting to the inking stage. I really don't like interruptions when I'm thinking of stories. When I do a comic, I need really intense concentration. Speaking of interruptions, Ollie also woke up early to work on her creative projects. She wants me to help her punch a hole into a wooden stick with a hole puncher. I'm a little annoyed because I'm being interrupted, but I can't stay annoyed for long. Look at this thing she made. She calls it a phone where you can call people. The hello comes out, and there's some kind of a storage compartment there. That's amazing. Well, that's life with kids. I've been trying to complete this series of comics about events which happened a year ago. It's where Toby gets really sick, and that changed everything in our daily lives. Why am I doing it? I just imagine that Toby will enjoy reading it when he grows up. So right now I'm doing the rough pencil sketch stage. This is probably the most important part for me when I'm creating a comic. I'm focusing on how I'm telling the story, making sure I tell it as clearly as possible. And how do I do that? I make sure that each page communicates just one point, and everything that happens in this page should be bringing out that one point. More than one point, and the story usually gets convoluted or confusing. So in the previous page, my main point was to set up that we had put baby Toby into an infant care, which gave us time to focus on our day jobs during the day, so things were working out fine. Now on this page, my one point is to introduce the problem to the story, the day Toby gets sick. I sometimes do the rough sketch on paper, but today I'm doing it on the iPad, on Procreate. There's no one best way for me. iPad is easy because I can undo, move things around, make things bigger. So do I always do a rough sketch like this? Not always, I switch it around. Sometimes I plan it out as small thumbnails first. Sometimes I go straight into inking from a script, like in this video. And sometimes if the story is quite simple and short, it's even possible to ink it out spontaneously, straight from my brain. I'd say I decide based on complexity. So if the story is more complex, like if it has to carefully connect with other parts of a longer story, planning it out with thumbnails or rough sketches gives me a better view of how the story connects with everything else. A lot of times I like planning it out in actual size like this. It helps me see how the words and pictures are interacting more clearly. In each panel, I try to make sure that the words say one thing and the pictures say something else. So when put together, they tell the story as partners, like they're doing a duet. What I don't want is having the words say exactly what the picture is also saying. Like this. Yeah, I try not to do that. It will just seem redundant. How tight do I make my sketches before I ink them? That depends on my confidence level for the day. Sometimes I can just wing it from just some scribbles, but today I feel like I need more guidance to pull it off. So right now I'm going over my loose sketches and doing a tighter layer of sketches before I go into inking. Okay, so it looks like I finished this page of sketches for this morning. Think it looks good? It's 9 a.m, time for breakfast, time to spend time with my family. I'll get to the inking later when I have time. It's already Tuesday and I haven't had time to work on the inking yet. Now I'm about to start a meeting with a client to start on a new illustration project, so maybe I'll have some time this afternoon. So last night, I completed watching Avatar 2 with Ollie, and then I could have done the inking. But by 9:30 I was feeling too sleepy, so I just went to sleep. So what can we learn from this? I would say that when it comes to personal projects, like doing comics, there's no perfect time to do it. I just have to grab the time and just make it happen. So it's 2:20 p.m. Wednesday, 4th of October, and maybe I could do the inking now. But let's see. Well, I have some new work from a client I need to get on with, but maybe I should just do the inking now. Yeah. Before I ink, I usually give it another read through just to check that everything reads smoothly. and I make any changes if I need to. So how do I ink digital pencil lines? First, I make sure the pencil lines are really dark by duplicating the layer. Then I add a very light blue layer over that layer. Then I set it to lighten or screen. This makes any color darker than this blue. So black becomes light blue. Then I print it. So as you can see, the lines are now really light blue. Now I can just ink over this and get rid of the blue later. This removes the need to erase pencil lines with an eraser. And the better benefit is that if I mess up the inking, I can always print out another rough sketch. But first, how do I decide which pen to use? To me, each pen speaks in a different voice, and I try to match the voice to the tone of the story I'm doing. So like this gel pen from Muji, I think it talks like a friendly neighbor in t-shirt and shorts. Simple and casual. So he would talk like, "Oh, hello, I'm your next door neighbor. How's it going?" I think he's too casual. I want more drama for this story. Now how about this Sailor Cross Emperor nib fountain pen? Due to its special nib, it gives me a very edgy line. So it almost sounds like a hip hop person, like, "Yo, yo, yo, check it out, check it out." So I think it's a bit too cool for this story about babies. Now for this Sailor 199 with a zoom nib, it's introduced by Parker. It has lines that have rounded edges. It's really smooth to use and it's very simple and casual. And yet it has a special nib which makes it a bit more special. Thin lines, which gives it like a quieter voice, and thick lines which have a louder voice. I need some casualness in this story, but also some drama, so I think this pen will be suitable for my story. So that's how I decide on which pen to use. Okay, let me see if I can get this done in one go without the camera running out of memory or something. Now you can see that this part here, I could have made it a bit smaller. I think it shouldn't be an issue. I'm putting this previous comic here as a reference so that the characters look consistent. Okay, let's go. Maybe the title should be Toby Gets Sick. Never mind, I can change that digitally later. Oh, you can see that it's really important that the blue lines are really light so that I can actually see my black lines over the blue lines. If I make the blue lines too dark, it gets distracting. So why do I ink with a real pen when I can ink digitally? Using a real pen helps me not overthink, so I draw quicker. With digital inking, I tend to overthink and over-edit, then it might look stiff. Well, that's just me. I'm just not feeling this drawing. Maybe I'm just not warmed up. Proportion seems to be off. Sometimes I'll just continue the drawing and fix it digitally later, but I'm gonna do a fresh start. Come on, come on. Okay, let's do this again. You've probably already noticed that I'm drawing in an indie style versus a Marvel or DC or manga style. Everyone has their own favorite style. I can do a few styles, but they usually revolve around the indie style. It seems to suit the stories I'm trying to tell, matches my voice. When I first started drawing comics, I would always try to avoid drawing the backgrounds. I was just interested in drawing the characters. But now I realize that backgrounds are really important. I shouldn't scrimp on them, because it tells the reader where the characters are. So that's why I started doing urban sketching. It trains me to draw any kind of background scene. So if you're interested to do comics or picture books, I would highly recommend joining the Urban Sketchers group. It's worldwide and there could be an Urban Sketchers group in your city or country. Look it up online. My pen ran out of ink, I need to refill it. I like that my pen has line variation. I can do thin lines for the raindrops and hair dots and bolder lines for the things I want to emphasize more. I'd say which pen I use does matter. And I'm sure all the pen lovers out there would agree. So this took maybe half an hour or 45 minutes, just doing some final checks and some small adjustments, and we can now proceed to the coloring. So I've scanned it and brought it into Affinity Photo, which is similar to Photoshop. And now I'll show you how to get rid of those blue lines that I drew over. If you look closely, you can see that the blue lines are still there. So go to Adjustments and look for Black and White. Then move everything in this panel to the far right. That will get rid of all colored lines in your picture, and all that remains will be your black lines. Next, go to adjustments again and go to curves. Adjust the curves to this S shape like this so that you get very dark blacks and a perfectly white background. Now I transfer the comic to my iPad and here I go with the coloring. Just two main things I'm paying attention to at this stage. The first is contrast. You'll notice that I gave my wife a white shirt and black pants. That was intentional. White and black is the highest we can go with contrast. The more contrast something has, the more our eyes will be drawn to that area. Now I want the area around my wife to stand out most in the picture. She's the main subject matter, so I make sure she has the highest contrast. Everything else with a mid-tone color next to a mid-tone color or a color next to white has lower contrast. So that's how I use contrast to ensure that important things in the picture stand out. Now the second thing I pay attention to is warm and cool colors. So if you were to look at the color wheel in Procreate or Photoshop or any drawing app, you'll find that half of the color wheel would be warm colors and the other half would be cool colors. So when I'm coloring a scene, I'm asking myself, do I want the scene to be more of a warm scene or a cool scene? If it's a warm scene, I'll choose to put more warm colors in it and just a smattering of cool colors. And if it's a cool scene, I'll put predominantly more cool colors and maybe just a bit of warm colors if I want to. I noticed that if I just put 50% warm colors and 50% cool colors, the scene just doesn't look right. So for this morning scene, I wanted it to be more of a warm scene. So the cool shadows in the trees troubled me. So I replaced those cool colors with warm colors and that looked a lot better. Just some final touch-ups and I have a second page to my comic. All done. Now I just have to edit this video.